one of the biggest things I think we need to constantly keep pushing towards, Sirano, is giving men language to express.
For sure.
Welcome to another episode of Let's Get Candid. I'm your host, Ziggy, with my amazing co-host.
I'm your girl, Lori, back again.
And on this episode, we are going to have one of the conversations that we know from season 1 that I love to have. So for season 1, we had guys on and we spoke about from men, well, boys becoming men. And now in season 2, we're talking about Untold Stories of Manhood. You already know that I'm excited because I love these conversations. Loren, what about you?
I am interested. I think in our community lately, we're finding that more people are having conversations with the men in our community to hear about, what are the things they're experiencing? What are the things they're witnessing in the community? I think we're in a time of change. We're definitely in an era where things are shifting pretty rapidly, especially when it comes to our men. So I'm interested to hear where this conversation is going to go.
I'm interested in the Untold Stories of Manhood because we know that they often don't, well, like you said, like before, there was this thing where they don't speak a lot or they'll just kind of let go underneath the rug, but now we're having more conversations. So I'm happy to see where this goes, like you said, and to see what we get from this, but also how this impact conversations in the community with men and, possibly change behavior, who knows, but, just see where this goes.
All right, so we do have on 2 guests again because we figured we need to keep it balanced with you guys, Can't just have one guy on here against us too. So I will let our lovely guests introduce themselves, starting with yourself, Mr. Cox.
All right. Well, I'm Devon Cox. I am from South Caicos. I am from a really large family. I think a total of 25 of us. I'm number 14 of some. But I have 3 children, a son, 2 girls, and I spend a lot of time working and mentoring young men. And so I think I have something to add to this conversation here today. I'm also an elder at Harvest Bible Chapel as well, so I do get an opportunity to herald God's word from the pulpit periodically. So I'm very blessed and grateful to be here.
Perfect.
All right. So, I'm Sirano Hunt. I'm also from South Caicos. Father. I'm actually one of the people he actually mentors. So it's an honor to be here with him today. Teeth lover. I'm in dentistry for now 10 years this year. I'm celebrating that. I'm a father of soon to be 4. I'm very, very happy about that. And like Mr. Cox mentioned, I'm just happy to be here to speak about something that we definitely do need to speak about in this country today. So I'm not an elder, but I'm a little brother to this amazing person here. So I'm just happy to be here today.
Perfect.
All right, so we are going to just jump right into the conversation. One of the things we wanted to know, as far as when it comes to being men in society, Ziggy and I, we were having this conversation prior to you guys coming on about how it's easy for us to look at men and say, a good man sacrifices. He, will do what he needs to do for his family, for his job, for whatever it is. That's what a good man does. But we never really sit back and think about the implications of that, or even after giving or pouring out into others, how do you pour into yourselves? So I want to hear from you guys, how do you actually pour into yourselves, if you even get the chance to?
You can go first.
All right, that's a good question. I mean, wow. It's funny that you asked that question in that manner. Like we briefly spoke on that earlier, right? Well, somewhat, in those terms. I think when it comes to being a husband, being a person that works full time, and a little bit more than the average, as Mr. Cox mentioned earlier in his opening, he worked today. I just came from work not too long ago. I mean, apart from that, and trying to keep fit and trying to just everything that comes to the territory. I think I don't know. It has you need to find the essence in the sense of balance. You know what I mean? For me per se, as of recent, I'd say you either I kind of had to have this battle with myself. Like you either do pick up from school, do homework right away, or the gym, right? And who doesn't want to work out? You feel good when you work out and all these kind of things. So for me, the balance itself is very important. You need to know how to do it. You need to know where to start. And then the list goes on. I just feel like for men in particular, that's one thing you don't really get to sit down and express enough. Having time for ourselves. And if you look at half of the men around here, I don't want to sound negative, but if you look at a lot of young men, there's nobody's actually paying. A lot of them not paying attention to themselves, and so it's something. It's a battle, believe it or not. So it's something we have to really and truly work on.
Yeah. So I would say successful people are typically really busy.
Really busy.
And so that's just part of the territory. So I'm very grateful to be able to be busy doing things that helps to change the spaces in which I'm living. I guess there's a difference between busyness and productivity as well, right? But,
Yeah, it is.
But yeah, so I try to find a balance, try to maintain at least a schedule where I work long hours, but also I find time to be able to get some activity in. And then also get time to do spiritual related work, because you want to have balance across all those spheres. But today, for instance, I got to play hoops with a 19-year-old, and I put a beating on him.
Congratulations.
But I kind of see it again as another opportunity to kind of reach across.
For sure.
So I think you speak the language of young people. You go into spaces where they're strongest, and then and they beat you in those spaces, and so they get to see. You rub shoulders with them during those times. So I kind of find a balance by being able to get out, exercise, spend time on the work, spend time in the church, spend time with my family. I like being productive. I like motion, When you settle along, then the moss build up on you. So I like to move. Yeah, so it's work to keep balance though. But I think we're trying to do that and to model that.
Yeah.
So.
And to be examples of it as well, So I would say, and to even emphasize on what he mentioned just now about even that, to put balance aside, he's as he mentioned earlier, the elder, but not in that sense. I mean, he's amongst a group of men who's still fully engaged with, maybe a generation and a half of young men. You know what I mean? So even that, trying to even incorporate that, believe it or not, it sounds like something that it come as a second nature, but it could be a challenge because there is clearly a gap between the age groups, obviously from the way of thinking, So that also, I'm happy you mentioned that, is something you have to kind of incorporate with every day, So.
Yeah, and I would say also too, you want to put the biggest things first. You want to give those big things priority.
Yeah, for sure.
The other things would always fit inside, right? But the big things, what are the big things? Spirituality, family, work. Those are big things, and you put them in first, big boulders. Then you can put the other things, the physical activity, and you can put the other, socialization and things of that into that jar once those big things are all fit in.
For sure.
So it's important to not compromise on those. Like discipleship making is a big thing for us at the church in which I attend, and so we try to prioritize that. Jelani is one of those, who sits within my discipleship group, and we prioritize meeting, and making sure that we don't compromise that, because that's important. That's how you change tomorrow, and so, just to be able to not compromise on those big buckets, I think helps to make fitting in the other things a lot easier.
Yeah.
And I think it's so important that you're both kind of emphasized or talked about all the different directions that you get pulled in, because I think a lot of times person feel like men are superheroes and they can do it all and they can take it on all, and no one stops to really say, but how are you doing? And that was a part of what me and Laura was talking about before when we were talking about the sacrifices. Like, no one stops to really say, what are you doing? How are you doing? Like, it's, how are you doing, but pass me a remote at the same time. So it's like, don't really get too deep telling me how you're doing. I'll be just trying to get the remote, but
for sure.
getting cross to that. So having that conversation. So what I wanted to loop into is, how is it carrying all of these different roles, being pulled in all these different directions, because everyone wants a piece, and you have to give to this and give to that, and then find, okay, now I have to give to me, and how does that look?
No, I mean, if you, I think it boils down to a mentality thing, you know, a mentality factor. If you ask me, I think, you know, again, like I'll put balance aside for now. We as men, most times men are very, well, how to say that? Men are very special. You know,
That's a good word.
we most times, and then to be honest with you, is we never really get to say to each other, you know, hey, great job, or I see what you're doing out there, and blah blah. You have very, very few men who are gonna stop you and say that to you. I mean, it's a challenge. It's a challenge to you know, wake up and keep going from outside the things that you're supposed to do. Spirituality, as Mr. Cox mentioned, family. These things are mostly important, but to sit down and try grasp that fact of, you know, sitting down and trying to balance out who's listening to you, who's hearing you out, and all these kind of things, it could be a challenge sometimes, believe it or not, outside of your family. You know what I mean? So it's something also we're working on as men, you know, that has, I guess you can say, voices here in the country. So
yeah. So we like to hear good job. So just tell us, you know.
Yeah.
You know, it's an affirmation, right? It's an encouragement to know that you're making the right steps and you're helping to, you know, recognize the work that you're doing. Right? I was literally having a conversation with one of my good friends, and he was saying that his son wrote him a letter. His son is an athlete; he's a swimmer, and he was just like, "Dad, we are so grateful. I'm so grateful for you and what you've done and the sacrifice you've made, and you know, thank you for being an awesome dad, and I appreciate you, and just have the greatest birthday ever." Right? That was. And he was telling me how he almost cried.
I would have cried.
And I know, right? You know, and so, but just the idea of gratitude expressed, right? We want to hear it, you know. But I think everyone wants to hear it.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, if you guys do a great job, you want to hear someone say great job. And Rich, great job, by the way. You guys did a great job.
Good job.
So yeah, but for some reason there is a hesitancy to come alongside leaders and say you're doing good or how are you doing. Because leaders are the ones who are mostly going and telling people how are you doing and pulling them up and pulling them out of their you know, shells, and so to speak. But it's important, you know, because we are human and we all need time to be encouraged and, you know, and to be, you know, to be told you're doing a good job. Right?
For sure.
Yeah.
You're watching the #1 talk show in Turks and Caicos and globally. And Lauren, what do they need to do?
Listen, you're already here. You might as well like, subscribe, and follow. You're already watching the episode, honey. Just get on it.
For sure.
But we don't get a lot of it, to be honest. It doesn't come frequently, but I think that's because they just assume you're always good.
Yeah.
And we're not always good. But no one is always
Yeah.
good.
I think
for
because
sure.
you always have this, when you have a strong personality or people see you doing a lot and you seemingly look happy doing it, no one stops to ask you, well, how is it? You know, I think if you probably had a long face, they probably would ask you, well, why your face
why you look like that?
Yeah, but once you don't look like all the things that you're carrying, people tend to believe, oh, you're fine. Like, yeah, he got it. And you kind of bypass whatever it is and not really pay attention to asking that question where you really want to hear. And a lot of times we do ask questions and we're like, we want to hear. But then it's blocked by, you know, our version of what we want to hear. So you say something, but I was expecting to hear this. So you're competing against, well, I'm responding from what I want to hear, not really what you said to me.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know.
That's good.
I mean, to even touch up on that is I just recently, I think it was Wednesday evening after playing ball, you know, a guy who I grew up with, you know, and believe it or not, I'm not too big on people coming around my immediate family, right? I mean, for a lot of other reasons. I mean, I believe in that whole spacing and secrecy that belongs to me, right? And he made a comment. He said to me, you know, you make it so easy, right? And it took me out my game even. You know, I think I'm really good at basketball. I beat him often, right? But you know, it took me out my game, and I kind of like in the middle of after that game, you know, I kind of had to pull him aside. And it's like, you know, emphasize. What do you mean by that? He said to me, it's like, man, you make it look easy, fatherhood, work. You come out here, you still play ball and blah blah blah. And I said to myself, as Mr. Cox said earlier, it's a blessing to be in that, but that ain't easy. You know, I almost got, I think I even got offended really, because it's like you have no idea what it takes
to that you're doing
to do that. But you know, in any event, he kind of added in, you know, like I think it's a great job that you're doing that, and like men to men, that's something that you're seeing more of, you know, more vulnerability, more openness, and you know, especially being we're faced with as men, and you know, suicidal rate going crazy and all that stuff. So being able to hear that from somebody you grew up with, not to even say it was soft or you're a little too emotional or whatever the case may be, it was good to hear that from somebody you grew up with. I know this guy for over 25 years. So that made me feel really, really good. But I had to kind of get like an understanding of what do you mean? Like, you have no idea what my life is like. So, you know, it's a great feeling to have someone, you know, recognize and say to you, hey, you know, just
good job.
Good job. You know, so but that letter his friend received, that would tear me up. Yeah. That would have tore me up for sure. Yeah.
You know, for me, hearing you say, you know, you do mentorship and you being someone he's mentored, it made me start to think about things we're experiencing now as a community. You know, our community, especially when it comes to our men, we're seeing where a lot of them are getting into, be it they're getting into violence, they're making bad decisions, and we're seeing that consistency where it's just bad decision after bad decision. And I can remember hearing you speak about a year ago where you were saying, you know, it's on the community. You know, it's on us how we treat our men, how we treat our young boys, because the response is just what they're doing due to what they've received already.
For sure, yeah.
So my question for you, both of you, is as fathers, as a mentor, as someone who has younger siblings, cousins, nephews, you know, how do you go about ensuring and bringing up the young boys in your life and guiding them in a way where they're not making those kind of decisions?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, you know, I think one of the first things is, you know, I think we all want to feel community. We all want to feel a part of something. We all want to feel like, you know, we can be understood, you know. And so I think the first thing is that you go into spaces and you don't judge it. And you create space for young men to be able to, you know, share what they're going through. But you got to build a relationship first. You know, many times that information doesn't just come out. You know, for instance, you go into the basketball court. We've been referencing it a lot here with basketball, and you get to meet people in their element of strength, and they might beat you in that. But you also get to talk, I guess, somewhat friendly talk with them during those processes. And the more you do that, before you know it, like the gentleman I was playing hoops with today, I got to learn his name. I don't know him from Adam, but I got to know his name, right? And which means that when I see him again, he's going to come up and he's going to say something to me. And we're going to talk. And before you know it, now all of a sudden, I can be a positive influence in his life. You know, and and I believe too, one of the challenges, you know, is that we wait for those lost men to come into the church. We need to go out into those environments where they are and to engage them. And once we can do that, we start to create, you know, more touch points, and you get to influence them, you know, by showing them not just the glamour of your life, right? Because one of the challenges I think is that people just look at success and they think, oh, that is success. That's what I want. I'm going to go after it. But there's a lot of pain to get to that. So by being able to just show them that, at least they have a reference point, and they can realize that, you think you got it hard? No, I've had it hard too.
Yeah.
You know, I lost my parents at a young age, right? I struggle in the school system, but then I have achieved an element of success. I can do it, you can do it.
For sure.
You need a reference? I can help you with that. Do you need someone to, you know, to sponsor something? You know, just saying, right? Now, don't come ask me for no money.
Just to clear the air.
But the point is, you know, you're showing them that, no, we're not just sitting here just talking or can't identify, can't relate. And as a result of it, you get to be able to impart wisdom, you know, and to share a perspective. So I think it starts there. The other thing I would say, too, is that, you know, part of the challenge that we have is, you know, more around the immigration issues. And so you got children that are born in this place, Turks and Caicos, and they are now adulting, but they are almost without proper status.
For sure.
So they don't feel a part of the community, which means that putting pain on the community is not my community. So we have to fix those things. These are some of the foundational flaws that we have to look at.
Yeah.
You know, and so I think we all have a responsibility to play our part in that. You know, so.
Real answer. Real answer. Yeah. I mean, to add to that, wow, that was a very good question, by the way. I think I would start off with saying the gap. There's a gap that I think a lot of people doesn't realize, and how important that gap is to be kind of merged. Growing up as a boy, so I grew up in Grand Turk as well. You had giants in the community that will say to you when you're doing wrong, when you even, believe it or not, pat you on the back and say when you're doing right, whatever the case may be. But there's such a gap in today's society, in our society, and there's so much young men that feel alone because, you know, and to touch on success, they see, you know, these successful men out here having no idea how they got it and having no way, you know, to get to that person or walk up to that person and saying, hey, you know, I'm thinking of studying this or whatever. And those are the people who have, that's a privilege to even want to think of studying or whatever the case. I'm thinking of the young man who even, I need a ladder to get a job. I don't even need to know to turn, right? And that's the issue we face here. And believe it or not, again, to reference the entire basketball thing, I think that place is not only a place for, you know, for you to get a good sweat and beat Devon. It's a place where, you know, again, like he said, he just met somebody today, right? And that young man is going to see this here, who I always looked at as a mega person, and say, hey, I know this guy. And this guy comes from somewhere. And, you know, I maybe if I play again with him, I can get closer to him and I can ask him some questions that would help me in advance as a person, or whatever the case may be. That place is a place of reverence where play with children, young men especially, right? I've played basketball long enough to have seen boys play in high school, and they play less when they graduate high school, and then you see them pop up, and then you see them on a shirt. I've lived long enough to see that. Mm-hmm. Last year, I think we counted 4, right? Who played ball often. You know what I mean? So in these things there's a gap. And we need to merge. We need to. These young men are growing up in a different world, their world. This is theirs, right? And until I would say we, you know, I would not exclude myself, until we find it important to know that these young men need for us to take a step back and reach our hands out to them, right? Another thing is these young men, their parents stepped out of the church, right? So the leaders, the fathers who are the leaders aren't going to church anymore. So how do I find my way there, right? The leader I wouldn't say doesn't believe in the leader. He doesn't, I don't know, with a little bit of success and things went right, I don't think I need the leader, the father anymore. So these young men are growing up. If you say out of 10 young men, 6 aren't going to church, right? The ones who are engaged, the ones who are, because, whatever the case may be. But if you sit down and ask them, they're not even cultured. They don't want to be cultured. They're Americanized. They want to be. So to think that you can be okay with being a part of their world and having, hey, look, listen, there's a merge. You're still a Turks Islander. You're still this. You still can be this. If you want to talk, you want to cry, whatever the case may be, it can happen. I'm that person for you, right? And I'm not giving out money like. I'm not giving.
You can write a letter, but you ain't giving up money.
In any event, it's just that I always had an issue with that. You know what I mean? Because I come from 2 worlds. I come from a world where I can have a lengthy and productive and educational and conversation with Mr. Cox or anybody from his era. And I can also have conversations with these little boys who believe that NBA YoungBoy is God. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? That's their savior to a lot of them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's my whole take on that. I just feel like there's a merge and there's a gap, and we need to have those 2 coexist. That's my take on that.
And I think like what I've heard coming up from both of your statements is relatability, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
To close that gap, because a lot of times people, like you said, like they will see you and all your success, because we normally tend to, as humans, we tend to always just show the perfect parts of our life. And so for a person who's looking outward, they'll be like, there's no way you can coexist in my world, or I can coexist in your world, or
For
you
sure.
can even understand my world, because look at what you do. Look at, all the praise that you get, like you can't relate. So like you said, basketball being that place where, we meet once and you get a conversation, like, this person actually cool. Okay, I can talk to them. And as time go by, you build that conversation and they realize that we ain't that much different.
Yeah.
And I think that might be something that can be a starting point for people to be able to, close that gap, because it ties into the whole thing of vulnerability and open up.
For
like
sure.
you can't, I feel strongly that you can't touch someone, you can't impact somebody if you're not willing to shed some part of yourself, right?
sure,
I feel
for
like
sure.
that's why we all have a story. It's to share it. It's not because I want this story to be to myself, or it's just my story and God's going to take me to the next place.
Yeah,
But
for
God
sure.
gives us a story because He wants us to share, what He's done in our life, so that other people can be impacted by that same story.
Yeah, definitely.
And vulnerability is the way to do it. And oftentimes females might be, they'll be open as open can be, and sometimes guys, tend to be pulled back. But that is what, even if they don't say it, I feel like the younger guys, the younger generation, that's what they want. Someone who would show them that it's okay to express your feelings. It's okay to talk about certain things. It's okay to
sure.
cry, because at the end of the day, we are all humans. Regardless of our gender, we are all human beings, and we're gonna all feel pain. We're gonna all want to cry at some point. We're gonna all feel it's too heavy, and just knowing that there's an outlet, that it's a safe place that you can actually have that conversation and not feel like, well, I'm a man and everyone expects me to be okay, so I have to be okay even
sure.
though I'm not, because that can also result in why they do criminal things. Like you have so much, if you think about a volcano, right, there's so much heat going inside and the friction that at some point all of that erupts at some
for
point.
Sure, for sure.
So you need to find a way to get that out, so that all of that don't start clashing and you erupt and have all of that meltdown in these negative ways that also impacts your community, and then you end up leaving families behind and that sort of thing. So we want to get more, or we'd like to see more of that relatability. I shouldn't even say we, because I'm not even a man, but you understand the point.
It's good that you notice. You know what I mean? It's good that you notice that we need what we need as men. But men have to understand and know what we need.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It can't just take. Again, I'll use this. Mr. Cox here as a pure example, believe it or not. And when I got that text message, when his name popped up, it was crazy for me as a South Caicos boy. His brother and I, born on the same day. For years, I used to say, "Well, I born in the morning." I say, "I older," but no, he's older. But I mean, we come from the same world. We come from, and just his example earlier, he mentioned losing both parents. And there's so much young men, especially, who've been through that, who have parents both living but lost them. You know what I mean? They're growing up alone, if I may say. But in any event, it's I guess that's where perfect advisory come in and mentorship and just using your leadership outside of your house, in your homes, and carrying it on.
But I would say, though, to your question, I believe today men they're better today from the place of emotionally expressing, their pain and hurt, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that is the shift that is starting to happen. Growing up in South Caicos, but I think the whole Turks and Caicos, the cultural gravity of you're constantly fighting against. Don't show your emotions. Don't cry. You ain't get no time for this, right? And many times when men are in a state of survival, you have no time to even reflect or to cry or to be human. You're literally running on adrenaline. And I think, once you have, kind of bust through that space when you're not in survival, you get to reflect, you get to think, you get to process, you get to recognize, wait a minute, these decisions I'm making might not necessarily or were the right decisions. But you also recognize you get to come face to face with yourself. And so, honestly, when I have those moments of relaxation, it's quite contemplative, and I feel led to write. And again, we never used to do that, like writing, like,
sure.
well, you right?
You writing your feelings.
And also, starting to put rhymes to it, and all that stuff. Like, what's going on here, And but again, you're constantly back when I was young, constantly in survival. Who get time to cry? Mommy died. Okay, hey, you got to still get up and make it happen because no one is gonna give you the handouts. Daddy died. Okay, you got to still make it happen. Who get time to do that? And I find myself now as a 40-pluser.
40-plus.
Where I find myself, having moments. I'm just like, wow, I realize I never really won. Some of these things. But I get to now create that space for others. It's okay. Listen, be human. It's okay. You just experience trauma. Allow it to sit in. It's okay to show and to express that. One of the biggest things I think we need to constantly keep pushing towards, Sirano, is giving men language to express.
For sure.
So because no one likes to feel silly. If we start talking about a topic you're not familiar with, you're gonna feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So most times people say, "What are you feeling?" and they can't even tell you because they don't know how to express it. So if I can give you language to express it, then all of a sudden now I've just opened up I give you an outlet to now get that out of you. So that's a big thing that we need to constantly keep teaching. This is what you're feeling, instead of anger all the time. Sometimes it's more than that. It's loneliness. It's a whole bunch of other emotions, emotional wheel. But we only know happiness and anger.
Just the two.
Those were you were allowed. Those were you were allowed to.
Yeah.
And then don't express too much anger.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Too much of any of that would cost you. But,
It's a big work. Yeah.
But again, in short, I will say this. Even again, speaking about those two spaces, those the gap and how important the merge is we are now in a time where tradition is clashing with the liberated mind, right?
That's
And
big.
you have, and it has to be allowed, right? It has to be allowed, because when I mean tradition, I found myself, moving back from the United States and thinking that, little sociology had my mind kind of, all over the place, and you think that you're this liberated person, and we as men, we are now in a place where we are watching our children who are now exposed to a world where it's a bit fast forward than ours, saying that it's okay to cry, it's okay to be this, it's okay to be that. We didn't have those spaces growing up, or you would be, crucially judged, right? So when I say the clash between the traditional mind and the liberated mind, and it can happen, it can coexist, meaning, a little bit too liberated, you know what I'm saying now? It could, throw your mind off a bit or whatever the case may be, but also, again, knowing that my culture is important, that in order for me to be a leader, I have to know that God comes first in my house and those kind of things. And it's okay to sit my boy down without getting loud with him. If he has a day where he explains it to be, not so good or whatever the case may be, speak to me. Let's talk about it. You know what I mean? Without me getting loud and thinking that's the way of masculinity works. And it's okay to be masculine and emotional. That's what we're learning. We're learning that. That's the clash. Tradition, liberation. That's the clash. I can be masculine and allow my beard to be gray and lift weights and go home and cry in the shower, and I could lay down with my wife and cry on the pillow without her feeling that I'm weak. I'm not. Nobody's weak. It's those things can coexist in these days, and that's important to understand. And I hope whoever sees this knows, like, hey, it's okay. It's really and truly okay to be the man, that you are, and macho, and it's okay to have your children know, hey, listen, you could cry here. Yeah, you can cry to daddy. You can cry to mommy. You don't have to go out there and become this terror in order to be an outlet for something because you're not allowed to say. Obviously that's been and still is going on here.
If you've been enjoying the conversations we've been having so far on the show, get into the comment section, go on our Instagram page and comment and let us know what you've been thinking. Also, we want you to get candid with your friends, your family at the dinner tables and the community that you're in.
And I mean, if you're about to start discussions outside of the show, you can also have a discussion here on the show with us. If you get on our Instagram page at let's.getcandid and just send us a DM saying you want to be a part, we'd love to have you.
I have tons of things to say. As I just mentioned, not being able to mourn. It's a sinister feeling, believe it or not. You lose both parents, and the world reminds you, hey, you can't stop, right?
The simple things of being human.
Yes.
But the expectations of being a man.
Yes. Get up and you have to go and he's amongst men of South Caicos who went abroad and got his education and came back and strive, and it's a great feeling to have those people still amongst that gap. It's not much. No. I can promise you, it's not much of them.
But to have them is
still
makes
a
difference. Yeah.
Oh my God, it's
still makes a difference.
Huge difference.
Yeah, that's good.
Gentlemen, so firstly, thank you for that, because I think it's important for us to bear in mind, all those things you listed, it's all a part of being a multifaceted human.
For sure.
And
not even subject to being just a man. It's human, but you have to now talk about man because we don't ever shed the light on it. And it seems like it's two opposite things. So now you have to be like,
and that's
it's
exactly
human.
what Mr. Cox said. It's forgetting that these are humans.
First and foremost.
The expectation is you just continue pushing because that's what you're supposed to do, just push through things. Which I think is very important. And I'm hoping that the people who we have watching this, they understand that that's a key thing, to remember humanity.
For sure.
And to remember that when dealing with people, when dealing with the men in your lives, when dealing with yourself, humanity is key. It's okay to be human.
Yeah.
And just to touch on, because I know we're about to go to the questions, because Leo just keep rushing and everything. But anyways, from that, like you mentioned, and I'll be short, when you mentioned about not having time to mourn, because you're just constantly going on adrenaline, and you have to do the next thing, because people are dependent on you. Like that, I kind of got stuck on that statement because, you imagine having feelings and emotions and stuff to process. We're like, I can't even stop to do this. I have to just keep doing this. I have to keep doing this. People are dependent on me. I have to do this. I have to do that. And then years later, you're like, I never really took time to
for
think
sure.
about this, to process this. And it kind of ties back into a conversation we were having, already on one of our episodes that we filmed. It's about, that space for persons to just take time and to just reflect and to go over those different things. Because sometimes the traumatic experiences that we go through, we take it through our life,
sure.
and we don't realize until we have the moment where we sit down and we're like, so that's why I was behaving like that.
Yeah.
Or this is why this came out like that, because I never dealt with this thing in the first place. And like Loren said, like, we're all humans, and we should give everyone, regardless of gender, the space to just go through your emotions. And sometimes we won't always understand across genders what it feels like to be someone, because you don't know what it's like for someone to carry what they carry and how they internalize that. Because me and Loren can go through the same thing and we will carry it differently, we will internalize it differently, and it will impact us differently. So we have to give people the spaces to whatever works for you. I mean, more or less positive coping mechanisms, but whatever works for you, and not judging them based on that, because once you start judging people, they go in. So you have to people to give them the space. Don't judge. If anything, if you need to understand it more, just keep asking more questions. Like, I didn't get that. Well, what does this mean? So that you understand people, because at the end of the day, what we want is to be understood. We want to be seen, we want to feel valued, like you said, we want to be appreciated, and we want to know that what we do matter, and that we do have this space of community, and that we feel like we're a part of something bigger than just, what we are. And in wrapping up, that we can relate to people, that no matter your status, your social, where you stand in the social ladder, we all can relate. Because one thing about humans is that we all go through pain, we all experience loss, we all have happy days and bad days. So we are quite essentially all the same. We're no different. It's just that what did you take, or how did you take your experiences, and how did that change your life and impact your life for, better or for worse?
Well said. And I love how you recognize that this is not just a male thing, right? We're human beings, and we all have emotions, and we all have trauma and traumatic past, and we have to figure out ways to navigate that.
For sure.
One of my challenges is that we have so much unhealthy examples that is really, infecting the community.
For sure.
And that's on the male side and the female side. And so part of it, but success is tied to it. And something, when you find success doing things the wrong way, it's difficult for you to now do it the right way.
Yeah.
Because you already find that success. But it's so important for us to try to get more healthy examples of what manhood is, what womanhood is out there in the community.
For sure.
And because sometimes you kind of feel like there's this tension that is now brewing between men and women, and it's just like, no, that's not it. And so, because we need great men, we need great women in our society to continue to, because the older women teach the younger women, the older men teach the younger men, right? But I believe, that we have a great work out there to model health. And if we don't deal with our trauma, what happens is that later in our life, when we start to deal with it, the people won't even they don't even know how to deal with the healthy version of yourself.
For sure.
Yeah. They don't even recognize that
They're so used to the other version. It's like, who are you?
Yeah. Who are you? Exactly.
So you become someone different.
Yeah. And then the pressures of society, for instance, you might want to be an artist, right? And it'd be like, who are you going to be an artist for? This is a hobby. This is not a, be an engineer. Well, be an engineer. We need engineers. But I'm an engineer. But what if I have a disposition towards something that you are pushing down to make look like it's nothing, it's not significant? All of a sudden I feel the pressure to be this person that I'm not. Then later I'm mad and I'm irritable and I'm frustrated and I'm pushing negative energy out there, so to speak. And so, because I'm not following the thing that I'm naturally called to do. So we need to encourage people to find health, and even when I go into the community, I'm not trying to create more Devons. Like, no, I want to create Sirano, so be who the Lord has called them to be, or Jelani, or whoever. Be who the Lord has called you to be. And my role, I see it, is just to try to push them in a direction, not to create miniature myself, right?
For sure.
And them to be healthy versions of themselves, and for me to embrace that.
I think that's really important, because as men, you have to make sure that you're guiding up your younger people, and even for myself, because I do mentor with young girls. You know,
Great.
you don't want them to be aiming to be like you.
Yeah.
We are all unique. We're all here for a reason, whatever the reason may be. All you can do is just guide on the path, but you can't say, this is the path you need to choose.
Exactly.
But what I will say that we need to choose is a
These questions.
question.
No, good segue.
The bowl. So we have a segment called What You Know About Us. And we have time for one question. So one of you, if you're willing to, pick a question out of this lovely bowl that Leo creates from.
Okay.
And then you just read the number out, and then it'll come on the screen. So all of us will read it. Answer it. I don't know where it's gonna be, if we can even answer it, but let's see.
All right, Sirano,
The
you.
question is by Leo. I am very, very
Concerned.
Go,
Be
Sirano.
concerned.
Mr. Hunch, go ahead and
All
pick
right.
a question.
So I will go.
Yeah.
I will pick. So do I pass it to one of you? Or?
No, just read the number out,
Read
and
the
it's gonna
number
pop
out.
up on the screen.
Number 2.
All right.
All right.
Our lucky number today. I'll rest this, yeah.
Whoa. When was the last time you cried?
Oh, that's interesting.
Oh,
So you want to go first?
I can answer that.
Okay, go
I can
ahead. You
answer
probably
that.
cried recently.
Boy, the last time I cried.
Yeah.
Man, I can't even think of the last time I cried. What about you, Ziggy?
I actually can think about it, so that's crazy.
Okay, so
The last
Ziggy,
time I cried, I don't know. I cried recently. Yes, I cried recently of a passing of someone. But I think it wasn't because it's funny because I don't think it was because of the passing of the person. I think I cried because of something my son said to me because he know the guy as well. But I think his words were. If I maybe if I repeat, I cry again. I ain't crying on TV.
Yeah. Yeah.
But in any event, I think that was my son said something to me that kind of like in a really a sad state. It made me, it pushed me to cry, and so yeah. I think that was the last time I cried. Maybe a week ago.
So a month ago for me, my daughter, who's going to be 18 on the 22nd, same with you guys. Yeah. So she decided that she's going to study civil structural engineering, and
Nice, congrats to that.
and so I was just telling her, listen, be all who the Lord has called you to be, and I'm proud of you. And she sent me back this note, this really nice long note, and blah, 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 blah. And Daddy, you're my hero. I'm just like, ah!
that was the
It
kicker right
did
there.
it to me. You know? So yeah, that meant a lot, because sometimes you're not sure how much you're impacting your children.
For sure. Yeah.
So when she said that touched me.
For me, the last time and I almost want to cry thinking about it. The last time I cried would have just been the other day. A friend of mine who had gotten into an accident and had to be flown out for a surgery. He came back home, and when he sent me a message, just the picture of him being rolled onto the plane, and the way I could not stop from crying, because it's just, when you care about people, you panic before they leave.
For sure.
You panic when they're leaving. You panic before the surgery, after the surgery, and just to
Yeah.
hear you're back and you're coming back and you're safe and you're fine. I cried like a baby.
Yeah. Imagine.
Yeah.
But for me, as the producers would know, I want to point them out, but as they would know from last season when we spoke, that I'm not much of a crier. And my whole thing was around being more open and trying to push myself to be more open. And so 2 weeks ago, I cried, but now I only cry at very rare occasions, and it's never really long cries, like little few drops. But
Baby cries.
But the fact that you cried
Little tear.
counted, right? And so it was me having this prayer with God, and now these days I have this thing where like, if it's something really serious that I'm talking to God about or praying to God about, I kind of make it almost like it's a conversation between two people. So like I sit down, it's like, and I'd be like, so God, and then I run in the conversation like that, not like, because I feel like for me it feels more personal, more real when I'm like, okay, God, so I know you're listening, so I'm gonna start this conversation, and then it was just in the process of that and just like saying that prayer or having that conversation with God and realizing like, how much he has done for me and how much more he will do for me, and how he always showed his ability to take me out of any situation, to always give me more than I've expected or I thought that I could have gotten. So I was like, oh, like, okay, really emotional for those few days. But that's normally really the times when I cry, when I'm talking to God. It's hard to cry when I'm talking to other people, but
That happens.
Yeah.
That's true. But it is a repressed emotion for me as well. And but I'm learning to let it go, not to restrict it, because it almost forms a bit of paralysis for me. Like it stops me, you know. Like sometimes, you know, even I have to prepare myself to go into heavy emotional conversations. I'm very much aware of my energy seeping out. So I literally got to prepare. Okay, I'm going into this. It's going to be a heavy conversation, and I need to be present. And but after that, listen, I need to rest. I need to sleep.
You need a nap after you cry.
Because it's something that I have not been training.
Yeah.
You know,
trained into
you know,
doing it.
you again get up and go for years, right?
Yeah.
But I'm learning the importance of the balance. If an emotion is coming, I'm not going to stop it. You know, but there are times I used to run from it. Hey, you feel like you gonna cry? Hey, get up and run. Go get out of here.
So now it comes and hits you and not tires you out.
It tires me out. It's true. It's true.
Oh gosh, but gentlemen, thank you so much for one, agreeing to come on the show, but two, for being open about the things you face, the things you're seeing in our community. You know, I think in general, as a community as a whole, we really have to be mindful of how we're impacting our younger people, but also how we are interacting with each other. Because it's easy to look at one another and just think, you know, everything is fine, like Ziggy said earlier. But when you really think about it, and when you really look at people's actions and reactions, and you start to think maybe things are deeper, you know, I think it goes a long way in being empathetic and not being so quick to judge people, you know?
For sure.
So I do appreciate you guys coming on for this. So, you have anything else to say, Zig?
And I'd like to say to everyone who's watching, I mean, first of all, to you both for coming on. For me, they know that, like I said at the beginning, I've always made it a point that we have to have at least one episode where we have men on and we're talking about something that's related to men, because we can't just be females can't be the only ones having a story. We're not the only people, you know, that live in Turks and Caicos or in the world. There's also a man's story. There's always a flip side. And so it's so important to have men on to also engage in conversations that impacts them, because who knows it better than them? Like, we're just going to be playing the guessing game and saying, I think it's that and it's probably this, but y'all live the stories and that untold stories of manhood. So who best to have on than men? Thank you so much for tuning in to a next episode of Let's Get Candid, and we can't wait to see you on the next one.